Hey guys, welcome to today's Java tutorial. Today we're going to be doing problem 4 from Tuesday's tutorial. So what's the problem? So write a method that takes one parameter n, a non-negative integer, and returns true if, whoops, it's not on the next line, if n is a multiple of 3 or a multiple of 5. Okay, so isMultiple 3 equals true, so it is a multiple of 3, isMultiple 10, so it is true as well, isMultiple, and then 8, 8 is actually false, should equal false. Okay, so multiples of 3 and 5. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, we have to write a method that takes in one parameter n. So here's our method name that's going to be here, which is our example. So we're going to say system dot out dot println, and we're going to use our method isMultiple, and we're going to pass 3 because that's our first example up here. We'll do all the ones that are up here, and we should get the same results. So just change this to 10 and 8. Okay. Now what we want to do is, well, we know we have to make a new method, so we'll just write in a bit of sudo make new method called isMultiple. Okay. Then what we want to do, well, we want to find out if it's a multiple of 3. Okay, so we need to find out if it's a multiple of 3 or 5. Find out if it's a multiple of 3 or 5. That's all we have to do. So how are we going to do it? So what we need to do is try and figure out a way where we can find what they entered. So what's passed through will, I suppose, divide evenly into 3 and 5. So how do we find that out? Well, in order to do that, we have to use the modulus, okay? And what that means is, well, if we divide 3 by 3, that goes in once, and there's no remainder. So what that means is, if we have 4 divided by 3, that goes in 1, and we've got 1/3 left over. So we need to we need to only want, we need to check it to make sure that there's no remainders left over. And then we say, well, if there is a remainder left over, then that means that the number doesn't divide evenly into 3 or 5. So how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to use the modulus to find if there is a remainder. Okay. So how do we actually write that? Well, first of all, we need to create our method, and it needs to be static variable boolean, and we already have our name, so our name is isMultiple. Okay, we're going to pass through one parameter, an integer, which is n, so the number up here, and it also says takes one parameter n, a non-negative integer. So we're also going to need to check to make sure that it's a non-negative integer. So let's just first put this in here. So if, let's write in a bit more pseudo, so let's just say check if is positive integer. Okay, so let's just do a little if statement and say, well, is n greater than or equal to 0. Oh, that's the wrong way around. Is n greater than or equal to 0. So if that's true, we don't need to put anything else. if that's true, we want it to do everything else in our system. So we're going to put in here another if statement, and in the next one is where we're going to have all this junk, except for make method. We'll put that up here. Okay. So what have we done so far? So first of all, we done our system.out.println, and we put in the name of our method and passed and our parameters. We then created our new method called isMultiple, and are taking in the parameters n, which passed from up here as type integer. And now we're going to check and see if n is greater than or equal to 0. And if it is, which means that it will be a positive integer, we want to then do the rest of our program in here, or else we want to exit the system. So system.exit. Okay, so in here we're going to put very simply, how do we check if for the modulus? Well, we're just going to use a simple if statement, and then our condition, we're going to have two conditions. First one being, okay, well, the number they enter divided by, or modulus of 3 equals 0. I'll explain that in just a second. Or n modulus 5 equal 0. Okay, now what does that do? Well, that says, okay, well, if the number they enter basically divides evenly into 3, that's what this sentence means. If the number they enter divides evenly into 3, or not sentence, if this that's what this condition means. If the number they enter divides evenly into 3, so if there's no remainder left over, so we should get 0, then do this. Or if the number they enter, if there's no remainder left, if let's say they enter, well, the first time they enter 3, so it'll come down, it will say, okay, 3 is a positive number, or 3 is a positive integer, so it'll come in here into our second if statement, and it will say if 3 modulus 3, so 3 divided by 3 is equal to 0, which it is because there's no remainder, so then it will execute the statement. Okay, or so let's say if for our second one, so it says, okay, well, 10 comes down, it's passed into the method isMultiple, 10 is greater than 0, so this is true, so it will come down here and it will say, okay, well, 10 divided by 3 only goes 3 times, and we have a remainder of 1, so this isn't true because we have a remainder, so 1 is not equal to 0, so that's it, false, that statement's false. But it also checks or 10 divided by 5 and then gets the remainder, so 10 divided by 5 goes twice, there's no remainder, so it's equal to 0, the remainder is equal to 0, so it will execute the statement. So now our statement, in our statement we're only going to have one simple little statement, return true. Okay, and then if this didn't work, let's say they didn't meet either of the conditions, we're just going to say else return false. Okay, so let's say they entered 8, 8 will come down. It is a positive integer, so it will come down to our second if statement. It doesn't meet this condition because it doesn't divide into 3 evenly, and it doesn't meet this condition because it doesn't divide into 5 evenly, so it will not execute this statement, and it will instead return false. Okay, simple as that. Let's run our compile and run. Ooh, we got a missing return statement just down here. Oh yeah, so our first checker needs a return statement as well. Return false. Maybe there might be a little bug in our system somewhere. Hopefully not. Let's just run it again. Unreachable statement. Let's just take this out for a minute and see what's going on. Okay, yeah. So it didn't like the way we had a return and we had a system exit. So we didn't actually need the system dot exit at the bottom. We just needed a return false. Okay. So let's just go through the program again. So it tells us that we need to write a method. So we've done that down here. It takes in one parameter n. So that it takes in a parameter n, as you can see here. A non-negative integer. Okay, so we asked for a positive integer, and returns true if n is a multiple of 3 or a multiple of 5. So if n divided by 3, so for the first case, n is equal to 3, so 3 divided by 3 equals 1, and we've nothing left over, which is what the modulus gets. Remember, the modulus gets the remainder. Okay, that's the most important thing about the modulus. The result is the remainder, not how many times it divides into something. The result is if there's a remainder. So we're saying, well, if the remainder is equal to 0, then execute the statement. Or if it's a multiple of 5. Okay, so it returns true, and if the conditions aren't met, returns false. And then if it's not a positive integer, so let's just put a non-positive integer in just to check. So let's put in -8, save, F6, and we get a false. So true for the first one, which is what we expect, because 3 is a multiple of 3, 10 is a multiple of 5, 8 is not a multiple of anything, and -8 is removed from our final statement. Alright. Again, I hope this was helpful, guys. I won't be able to probably make any more videos until after the exam, so I hope all these were helpful, and best of luck in the CA exam. Thanks.